Do you find you can't get enough spooky goodness? Then by Jove, you need to check out the Generally Spooky Patreon. For the princely sum of £4 a month, you can enjoy our main episodes a whole day earlier than the general public. If that doesn't float your boat, you can become an £8 a month spooky trooper. You'll get the main episodes early and access to 12 extra Patreon exclusive episodes, with more to come. The episode that really tickles my pickle is about Private Wojtek, a brown bear that served in World War II. As a top draw £12 a month Spookmaster General, you'll be on Cloud 9 with access to our Wee Blether series. In it, my darling wife and I debrief episodes, play games, and chitter-chatter about our goings-on. You'll also become a member of the Spooky Book Club, where Eilidh is currently reading us Peter Pan, having just finished Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Simply marvellous. Did I mention you also get 10% off our quality merchandise if you join? You bet your bacon you do. So come join us. Get your peepers over to patreon.com/generallyspooky and support your favourite rapscallions. Tally-ho!
Hey guys! And welcome to Spilling the Crime, a true crime podcast hosted by
me, Umberto Melo.
and me, Jonas Grancha. Join us in this big adventure where we will be talking about crimes with a tipsy twist.
How this crime happened, I want to know what the fuck is the unwrapped chocolates.
Her name is Sharma Melgalings. Magmar meningitis? What?
Where's the dick, Lorena? Where is the dick?
Oh!
What is this?
Are those your enemies? Are they after me too? Do you ever feel like a plastic bag?
What the fuck?
And then he masturbated on the carpet.
Dangerous questions.
Why?
We did not agree with this. Carl said that.
Don't what? Don't copyright us.
Don't copyright it. Yes, please don't block us. So grab your glass, cause the spilling is about to begin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to part 2 of the Generally Spooky Podcast.
Oh, well, the
Almost.
Ballechin... Part 2 of the Ballechin House episode. This isn't just part 2 of the podcast.
We're entering our second phase, like the Marvel franchise.
Our second era.
Yep. Did you spot the mistake? Because I spotted it while I was editing. That for some reason, when I was talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, I said Jack Black, not Jack Sparrow.
And I didn't clock it.
Nope, I said that, and we both carried on the conversation.
We're so in sync with each other that I knew who you meant.
Yep.
So just didn't hear what you actually said because I just knew what you were talking about.
And I do love Jack Black, so his name does come up quite a lot.
You do. He is one of your favourite people.
Yes, I would say so. He's just so funny. Anyway, kudos to you if you spotted that.
If you listen to the last part, Kieran and I had to have words after it because Kieran was constantly playing with a pen that he continually dropped on the floor.
We had words during recording, to be fair.
We had more after that wasn't recorded. And I have ordered something to remedy our situation. I've ordered him a fidget cube.
Like the man-child I am.
Mm-hmm, and a little armchair pocket to put his stuff in. But it hasn't arrived yet. It might arrive while we record, and you will enjoy the benefits of that. So I gave Kieran a scrunchie, which he was playing with, and has already managed to drop to the floor.
I was chatting and it just pinged down my hands there.
Like, 2 minutes in. We have been recording for 2 minutes and 8 seconds. You drive me insane.
This is true. I'm a sock puppet or something.
No, you just need to sit still for a bit.
Impossible.
Well, even so, if it's impossible, whatever you're fidgeting with, you just have to not drop.
We should roll some music before I get in trouble. Quick, distract Eilidh. Get her talking about the episode.
Too late. You're already in trouble. So yes, we have a two-parter. So this is part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1 of the Ballechin House story, I would recommend doing so.
So what are you doing here?
Because we set everything up last time.
We did indeed. Maybe we that thing where you get caught out, where when you play a podcast, they play in reverse chronological order.
I cannot stand that.
And because you can't reverse it, and it really annoys me.
I think you can on Spotify now, but you never used to.
Yeah. It's the same on
really
YouTube.
Annoying.
Same on YouTube. It's such a pain in the bum.
Yeah, I've had that before where I've wanted to watch a series in order. And what I've had to do is go to someone else's channel who's made a playlist of everything in order. And watched it that way, but they've had to make a separate playlist to do that.
It's really daft. Anyway, if you've ended up here because of these circumstances, sign our petition. No, just go back and listen to part 1.
Yeah, it'll make more sense. I mean, live your life. We're not going to tell you what to do.
Well, that's true.
But Odin's telling you what to do.
Isn't he always?
Because he's barking.
He's barking because another dog is barking. Where does it end? So, we got left with the... Oh, what was the name? The SPR. No, yes?
Yep.
The Society of Psychical Research.
Psychical.
Psychical. Not cyclical. So close.
It's not push bikes.
No. They were going to Ballechin House, I believe.
They were indeed. It's a very succinct but accurate recap
Thank you.
of what we talked about last time.
Because we talked about some major players of the SPR. Are those players coming with us to the house, or are they just general members?
Well, some of them, not all of them. A couple of the ones that we talked about last time are after our story takes place.
Okay.
Or at least the main things that they're known for happened afterwards. Some of them did go to Ballechin House, but the main 2 investigators that I'm going to tell you about, we haven't already discussed.
Ooh, exciting. Well, I will let you get started.
So yes, Ballechin House is haunted. And reports of this haunting have reached the ears of members of the SPR. So they have decided that they are going to investigate. And when we finished last time, I said that we have to meet the dream team.
Yes,
who
you
would
did.
take on the spectre of Ballechin. So I'm going to introduce you to them.
Please do.
Firstly, we have Ada Goodrich Freer, who I'm going to refer to as Ada, this type of person. But Ada claimed that she was a medium on her own.
I never thought that type of person would join, because I thought it was more about proving or disproving. So you couldn't be more biased than saying, well, I am a medium. So, mind you, you can still prove it fraud.
But maybe that's the best statement of your reliability.
That's true.
Complete confidence that you are telling the truth and you can do these things.
I'm so good, I root out the fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair play.
She was an avid writer, often writing under the pseudonym Miss X. So she didn't write under her own name a lot of the time.
Yep.
And it was rumoured that she was having an affair with F.W.H. Myers, Frederick Myers, who I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Although this has been greatly disputed. It seems like one of those things that was made up to kind of discredit her. We're going to talk about it more later, but that was the rumour swirling around about her and Myers.
Yeah, I feel it's one of those unfortunate things that happens if a male and female co-workers just get along really well. It lends itself to those kind of rumours to be like, I bet they're having an affair. But
Yeah, but it
no.
never comes down as badly on the man.
No, never.
So like, even if that is the case, it's always pretty unfairly weighted,
Yes.
from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
She investigated several times on behalf of SPR. So she was out and about, she was very active. Again, we'll get into some of those later on. She actually wrote a book called The Victorian Ghost Hunters Casebook, I believe, about her investigation of Hampton Court Palace, which is a very famous castle down in England,
That's pretty cool.
which we don't have time for right now.
We don't have time, people.
The other half of our dream team is John Patrick Crichton Stewart, the 3rd Marquess of Bute.
That's a title.
We have the aristocracy again,
But of course.
and he's very interested in Ballechin House.
Okay. So it's not... I can't imagine an aristocratic ghost hunting team. It's very strange.
It sounds like the basis of quite a fun novel. John's father, the second Marquess, was heavily involved in the construction of Cardiff docks
Cool.
and the mines which were down there.
That sounds like that would be lucrative.
It was, but there was lots of protests in Cardiff about working and living conditions that he was profiting from.
Yeah, that sounds right, unfortunately.
And for a while, he was quoted as being the richest person in the world.
Oh no. I bet he's very disappointed that his son is a ghost hunter.
Well, he died when his son was very young.
Ah.
I will also say, richest man in the world, he pushed for the ejection of, quote, the Irish poor from the mainland back to Ireland, unquote.
Oh,
Because he just felt they shouldn't be here.
that's horrendous.
Yep.
Oh, rich people are the worst.
Richest man in the world. Could have fixed the problem.
Yep.
Complained about it instead. But yet, John, the third Marquess, he took on the title when he was only 6 months old.
Wow.
So he didn't really know his dad.
Yep.
So his dad didn't have time to be disappointed in him.
What if he made contact with his dad's spirit just to get lectured about being a disappointment?
Or his dad just didn't even want to know. So don't even talk to me.
What are you doing here? You should be out working. Get a real job.
Well, one of the reasons that he may have not been entirely enamoured with his son was John converting to Catholicism when he was 21.
Oh,
And this was not the done thing in 1868 when it happened.
okay.
It was a pretty big scandal that he converted to being a Catholic.
Damn. So it is once again out of fashion.
Yes. And I found this kind of funny, but it's also kind of bad. John was part of a court case in his lifetime because he was on the board of directors as the president for Cardiff Savings Bank. Mm-hmm. But he was president of this bank, or president of the board of directors, from when he was only 6 months old.
Ooh,
So that happened after his dad died.
Yes.
Much later, the bank got into trouble because it couldn't pay its debts.
Mm-hmm.
And John's lawyers had to claim in court that he wasn't liable for the failures of the bank because he had no idea what was going on there.
Well, that seems silly. It would even have to come up.
No, like this as an adult. So he's been the president his entire life. They had to go into court and basically plead that he's incompetent. He has no idea what's going on with that.
Oh.
He's never paid attention, so it's not his fault.
Oh, that's not good.
They're not pleading this for him as a baby.
Yep.
Even though he was the president.
Well, at least, today we can have faith in our bankers. Recent events have shown that nothing like that would happen.
Well, I mean, infamously, bunches of bankers are just great guys.
Yep, the bankers en masse are just superb.
Like, the one thing that you want to be in this world is a banker. Mm-hmm. And you want everyone to call you a banker.
Absolutely.
It's like a term of endearment.
Yeah.
Because you have such a good reputation
Yes.
as a banker.
The thing in primary school where you say, my dad's a banker and he banks all day, but you have to, fish hook your cheeks.
And you just do that because you're so proud.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the court case, quote, it was not suggested that he ought to have known what was going on or that he had a duty of care to inform himself as to the affairs of the bank, unquote. It was just that he had taken it on when he was a child and he didn't know anything, so that meant that he wasn't liable.
Oh.
So although he wasn't blamed for the fraud that had gone on, it was pretty embarrassing that he got outed for being completely incompetent.
Well, if you weren't busy hunting ghosts, you could read a financial report, I guess.
I just thought it was so bizarre.
That is really bizarre. Because any which way you cut it, it's really stupid.
Yeah.
If he was genuinely just never there, because to him it was like an honorary title. Because if you'd always had it, you wouldn't go to meetings as a 7-year-old, would you? So if something has ran without you for 16 years, say, you wouldn't suddenly go along. But who was running it with been the president's not here, but that's fine. He's never here. Why?
The president's not here because he's 8.
Yeah. But we got this, don't worry. We're not going to remove him as president. We're just going to keep him here and in absence. What?
So strange.
So bizarre.
John helped to build Cardiff Castle in his lifetime. He was the rector of the University of St Andrews and, quote, paid for St Andrews University's first female lecturer who taught anatomy to women medical students when Professor James Bell Pettigrew refused to do so.
Huh.
Unquote.
Well, that's cool.
Very cool,
Yep.
I think.
I like that.
You know, he has all this money. He's at least putting it in some places where it's useful.
Well, he's doing a little bit of good. Can't argue with that. Can't argue with that at all.
When he died in 1900, he left £20,000. So that's £20,000 back then.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done the maths to figure that one out.
But I love the maths.
Well, you do it then. Go on, right now.
No.
Then don't complain.
That's the whole dynamic. You do all the research, then I sit here and make demands.
I don't like this arrangement.
We're coming up to our 50th episode. It's too late now.
Or maybe, your time's up.
Oh no. I'm going to get fired after the 50th episode.
I'll do
haven't I?
50 and then you have to do 50.
Ooh, interesting. Well, if you've been here for the deep dive, prepare for the overview once I'm in charge. Just because I've been president of this bank doesn't mean I had to know what was happening at it.
Oh, I see. In 1900, when he died, he left £20,000 so that a hospital could be built in Cardiff, which became the... Oh, I didn't look up how to say it. Rhiannon's going to be mad.
Oh no.
Royal Hamadryad Hospital? Hamadryad Hospital?
Okay. In Cardiff.
I'm assuming. I shouldn't, but I'm assuming. And when he died, his heart was buried in Jerusalem for religious reasons.
Oh, who had to transport that in 1900? Just his heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite spooky in itself, really.
Kind of, but it's like it was quite a common thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, for like big Catholic supporters or people who are very strong in their Catholic faith. They want part of them to be buried in the Holy Land. I
Interesting.
think it was quite a common request if you had the money to do it.
Well, that's true, because it's nice. Be a nice way to celebrate your religion, wouldn't it? I've never heard of that.
But he actually did it.
Fair play. Fair play.
So, an interesting character. I don't want to get into the minutiae of his life, especially his family's connection with Cardiff and the mines down there and the building of like towns. And I think the city of Cardiff, they had a lot to do with that.
Okay.
It's very complex and at times kind of terrible. And I don't want to just skate over it.
No, but we won't get bogged down in it either.
So look into it if you're interested, because his family had a big connection with that. But we care about John because he was interested in the paranormal.
Yes, so we've got John and Ada.
Yes.
The dream team.
Yes, he and Ada had worked together before attempting Ballechin House. He had funded her investigation of Clarendon House, which was a big deal, and her investigation into Second Sight up in the Hebrides.
That's what we need. We need somebody to fund our ghost adventures.
Right? Wouldn't that be wonderful?
I take it back to all you rich people out there. Come on, if you want to share some of the love, let us know.
We're open to being bought.
Yes.
Just name a price.
We will investigate for ghosts on your behalf.
Kieran will sell the podcast that I slave over. We've talked about Second Sight before in our episode about the brand Seer. And it's quite big in Highland tradition, Second Sight. So that's why she was up in the Hebrides looking into it.
Got you.
And he funded the entire thing.
Very cool.
On this occasion, they decided that they were going to investigate together. From what I can tell. So we're finally here.
We've made it back. We're ready for ghost dogs. Knocking that sounds like shouts somehow. Gunshot ghosts. Pew-pew.
Your recall is phenomenal.
Thank you.
According to John and... What?
Are they going to do a really good job, or are they just going to do a medium job? Are you glad I interrupted for that?
Right, I'm hiring for the next 50, guys. Submit your application. You will immediately be ruled out if you fidget with a pen that you drop every 2 minutes.
I don't even know what I've done with the scrunchie.
Has it got? It's up there. That's my scrunchie.
I would have found it.
Because you're so famously good at finding things and seeing things.
Yep. I have second sight, you see.
You don't have first sight.
Yeah, I need to take a second look for most things I'm looking for.
You don't even take a second. You don't take a first look. You come and get me.
I'm being outed.
I am your second sight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a good thing, Kieran. Okay. According to John and Ada, John heard about the haunting at Ballechin House when he was in Falkland near Fife. Mm-hmm. He spoke to a priest there, and the priest told him about the strange noises and the strange occurrences that were happening at the house, while this priest was staying there with a retreat of nuns.
Oh! I was just thinking, like, what a rumour mill, but he was there.
John apparently spoke with Father Hayden, who was the priest that we talked about in the last episode. Mm-hmm. So apparently the priest told John firsthand about all of the phantom sounds that he had heard. One of which sounded to the priest like a large animal throwing itself against his bedroom door. But when he would check, there was nothing there.
That would be awful. Mm-hmm. Awful. Oh, I can't imagine the fright you would get.
And he compared it to something similar to a dog. Mm-hmm. But he was very aware of all the legends. So he said that like something like a dog or like a calf of something of that size.
Okay, yeah. Geez, oh. It's one of the Conjuring films. They have somebody trying to break open the door, and then there's nobody there.
Such a horrible image.
Yeah.
But yeah, throwing itself against his bedroom door.
Awful. I think it was one of the nuns.
Oh, God. Just so violently repressed that that's what they have to do.
Yeah, you've been so pious for so long that you just have to fuck about with it to get it out of your system.
Yeah, you just want to mess with him.
Mm-hmm.
According to later reports, John spoke with many people locally about the house and basically came to the conclusion that something really strange was going on at Ballechin House, according to everything he heard.
Yep.
So he decided to rent it out from February to May in 1897.
Cool.
Like 3 months?
Yeah, a big long time. Okay.
On the basis that they could carry out a more thorough investigation. It would give them more time to witness what had been reported rather than just going along for a night or two.
That's what we like to see.
Right.
That's more on board. See, I'm still on board with the SPR. Just they're being thorough on the whole. They're doing good checks. They're trying to do experiments and things.
From the outside, this looks pretty good.
Yep.
John rented the place so that Ada and several other SPR members could investigate the claims. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just John and Ada. There was a huge variety of guests, and I couldn't find a list of these. Mm-hmm. It was a huge number of guests and investigators who came to Ballechin House over this 3 months. And they were coming and going. Some people were invited who had no idea what they were there for, but were invited by the SBR as unbiased observers.
Excellent.
So they didn't know the story going in, but they were supposed to report anything strange. But there were lots of investigators from the SBR. Some of them might come up for a couple of days, a couple of weeks. There was lots of coming and going.
I want to do that.
And Ada was kind of the one in charge of it all.
Okay,
She gets described as the hostess later. She's the one who was organising everybody, making sure everyone was fed and cared for. Everyone had a room. She knew when people were coming. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing.
Cool. Sort of hostess and lead investigator.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you right now that John and Ada felt that there was enough evidence and enough strange occurrences. They wrote an entire book about their stay at Ballechin House.
Wow. They felt enough happened to warrant a whole book.
Mm-hmm. They wrote about it. They wrote a whole book.
Damn. Because, it's not going to be very interesting if they're like, we were here for 3 months. not much happened. The end.
Could do that in a tweet, really. You know, if Twitter wasn't burning, you could just do that in a tweet.
Yeah, that'd be alright. Doing a telegram.
Kieran's arms just fell off.
I know, that was quite crunchy, wasn't it?
A lot of the activity that they reported focused in 4 rooms of the house. And from what I saw, because I read most of the book. I found
cool.
I found an electronic copy. It was very dense. And a good portion of the book is Ada's journal that she kept. But it seemed to be focused in 4 rooms, and from what I read, they were all bedrooms. So usually there was always someone sleeping in one of the haunted rooms.
Okay.
At night. But I'm going to give you a rough list of some of the things that they experienced at Ballechin House.
Hit me.
So that you can tell me what you think.
Do you want what I think or what I really think?
Both.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to lay it out as a narrative this time, because that's not really what the SPR were doing. So I thought I would stick with their style.
I like it.
Do something different, you know?
Yeah, mix it up.
So, first is vague, unexplained, terrifying noises.
Okay.
And there was a whole variety of these.
Could you make some for me?
No. But an appendix records nearly 100 audible phenomena, including shrieks, groans, crashes, and monotonous reading.
Ooh, that's brand new.
And someone else described that monotonous reading, this is direct quotes, by the way, as a disembodied voice that sounded like a priest leading worship.
That's actually kind of what I imagined. Like, just reading from a Bible.
Yeah.
But very unenthusiastically.
Or like chanting.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that you get in religious service.
Uh-huh.
That's what I imagine. You know, when sometimes we went to the Sacré-Cœur
Yes.
in Paris, and they were doing that while we were there. That kind of low, monotonous.
Yeah.
That's what I imagine. Very creepy.
Very creepy.
A hand carrying a cross. A disembodied hand.
Spooky.
Multiple apparitions over the time they were there. Some people reported seeing a ghostly black dog.
This is a spooky place.
How are you feeling?
I'm just kind of... I'm wondering if there was just a bit of a mania. So, you know, everyone was feeding into each other's kind of like fears and suggestions.
It's a fair assumption.
Yeah. To just kind of get themselves really hyped. Almost like daring each other to like sleep in the haunted room. And then they do. And they're quite on high alert. So then they're seeing things.
Yeah, fair.
However, very different reportings than our usual ghosts.
Absolutely. Other apparitions included ghostly nuns and ghostly monks. There was one person, I can't remember if it was the SPR investigation or one of the previous tenants, reported seeing a procession of monks and nuns going past one of the windows while they were outside. So they were all walking past the window.
Wow.
In a procession when no one was in there.
That would be alarming.
Again, very visual and cinematic. If that was in a Conjuring style movie.
Yeah.
Like a James Wan movie. Very unsettling.
Very unsettling.
But then I think it's always unsettling if it's people associated with the church.
Yes.
Who you see as a ghost. It's quite creepy.
Yeah, ghost nuns are just spooky.
I remember, this is a complete tangent, I don't even know if I've told you this story before.
Ooh.
But I remember getting this book from the mobile library van that used to come to our primary school.
Nice.
And it was one of the, I don't know if you remember, there was a whole series of them. They were like eyewitness books, big ones, and they were non-fiction. And they had a white cover and lots of photos.
Oh, vaguely.
And they had ones like, you might have one on transport, Wales, different countries, all kinds of stuff. I remember getting a book, either one of them or similar to that, that was about like ghost stories.
Oh, yeah?
And there was one in one of them about a ghost nun. And that freaked me out so badly that I started sleeping with my door closed for the first time.
Wow.
Because I became convinced that I would wake up and because the light would be on in the hall.
Uh-huh.
I was convinced I was going to see the shadow of a nun on my wall
Damn.
against like the light of the hall coming into my room.
That's a really cruel kids' book.
Yeah. I mean, I do get out.
Well, that's true. Thus beginning your love-hate relationship with the spooky.
Yeah. It's probably the first time I properly remember being scared of like a ghost story.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even seeing the nun that I was convinced was going to happen. I was convinced I was just going to see the shadow as if she was standing in my door, casting a silhouette against the light of the hallway.
Ooh.
So I started sleeping with my door shut.
Yeah, that's funny. You wanted less light in your room to be safe.
Which is like, nope, not coming in here.
That's not happening today. Weird.
So yeah, very creepy is what I'm trying to say, is
Yes.
where that story came from.
Nun-
Apologies.
Dead nuns equal creepy.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway message from this whole podcast.
So you need to listen to the rest.
Nope. Well, thank you for listening, guys. That was part 2.
Over the course of their time at Ballechin House, the investigators said that they tried a whole number of methods and tests to try and, I guess, measure the paranormal, assess the paranormal. They did things like hypnotisms, Ouija boards, crystal gazing, and automatic writing to try and get results and suss out what was going on.
Yep.
Do you know what all those things are?
Yes, actually, because automatic writing is where you hold a pen and put it on paper, but you just kind of like close your eyes, don't you? You have like a blindfold on.
Yeah, you're not looking at your hand.
Yeah.
And the story is that you'll be influenced or subconsciously moved to write a message from the dead.
And there's no way that could go wrong.
I mean, not that I can see.
It's not like people could just write something.
No, I don't think so. Fairly certain that's not how that works. Because
No.
it's a ghost.
Because it's the ghost,
Yeah.
I see. I think Darren Brown did automatic writing in his special where he guesses the lottery numbers.
Oh yeah, I liked his specials. I know a lot of people like don't like him and didn't enjoy them, but watching them as a teen, I thought they were great.
How do you not enjoy it?
A lot of people don't.
Crazy.
But yeah, they tried all kinds of things.
Crystal gazing. Thinking about it slightly more, I only know it from fantasy, as opposed to like what the reality is.
Well, I think it's a type of scrying.
Scrying. I only know that from fantasy.
Well, there's lots of different mediums that I've seen used for it in like ghost hunting shows, and there's a series that I watched on YouTube that I quite enjoyed where they tried a few different things. But you might use like a black mirror or just a normal mirror, some kind of reflective surface, and you go into a kind of meditative state and you see things.
Okay.
And the belief there is that you'll see whatever is in the house with you or whatever.
See to the beyond.
I don't know if I believe what they're doing, but when
that's-
people do that, that's the goal.
Yeah, okay. Then they just go scrying home to mum.
Because of the ghosts, yes.
Yes. Because of mean ghosts.
Yeah. I don't know what's so confusing about this.
Oh, nothing. It's quite a picture. Just a single house where all of these things are going on. I know they weren't necessarily all happening at the same time, but it's like the weirdest fraternity you've ever been to. Well, oh, that's our Ouija board room. We're doing crystal scrying in here. If you want to try out automatic writing, that's down the hall.
It's almost like a clubhouse.
Yeah,
Maybe we should do that.
we can do that.
I mean, I say that, but we've been discussing the possibility of going ghost hunting, and I'm not there, bravery-wise. I don't think I could do it. So I say that with lots of bravado and confidence, and I don't have any.
Yeah, knowing you're in your nice comfy chair at home.
It's sunny outside. Just had some strawberries and cream. It's very different to sitting on a dusty floor in the dark by yourself in a haunted building.
Yeah.
What I find interesting about what the investigators reported and what Ada wrote or Ada and John, but like thinking of her journal, is that by the sounds of things, all of this might not be Major Robert at all. The story of him being really interested in reincarnation doesn't lend itself to the place being haunted by nuns.
No.
And the father and the nuns who lived there didn't die, or not lived there, who stayed there, didn't die there.
Well, that's what I thought with the procession that went past the window. Why are they there? Who is that? Mm-hmm. Because, going back to our ghost logic, and how a ghost would get attached to a place, why would there just be some random priests and nuns and monks?
Right?
But sure, because surely there needs to be a reason. They're not just... Why would they just pass through? I want answers, Ailey.
I'm not sure how much Ada, John and the others knew about the history of Ballechin. I feel like Ada and John at least knew the legend of Robert.
Uh-huh.
And what was supposedly going on. And I want to say that would colour their perception and what they were looking for if they knew the story.
Yeah.
So it's tricky because there's a lot of things that cast doubt, but the stories that come from it are quite striking. Like one woman claims to have seen the ghost of half a woman sitting on one of the beds.
See, that's absolutely terrifying.
I don't know which half. I don't know if it was like horizontally or like left and right.
One arm, one leg.
I don't know.
But on opposite sides.
Like a crab. That's awful. I don't want to think about that.
Yeah. Spooky. 10 out of 10 on the spooky scale.
Right.
But kind of a 0 out of 10 on the compelling scale. Because what's she doing there? Why is there? Why would half a woman be haunting a bed in a random house?
Right. But apparently there were investigators and I think previous tenants of the house as well. Mm-hmm. I may have my facts crossed there, maybe it was one or the other, but they were so scared of what they were witnessing while they were staying there at night that they would stay awake with loaded guns.
That's a disaster waiting to happen.
To try and like catch whatever was haunting the place. And this is coming from the context where the best advice that was given to paranormal investigators if they saw a ghost was to grab it.
To grab it?
Yeah. That's what they would do at seances to try and prove that a ghost was real.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And it's how a lot of frauds were caught.
Yes.
People like Helen Duncan.
Oh,
they would take on the spirit. They would like sit in a cupboard and summon the spirit. Mm-hmm. And then this would all be in the dark. And then the spirit would come out and like wander around the table and would do things. So people would try to grab it. The spirit would wrestle itself free, escape, and then the medium would come out of the cupboard.
Uh-huh.
But you can see the problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, first, that's the most Scooby-Doo thing I've ever heard. Gotcha! And then they take the hat off. Like, oh, Corporal Santos, you know. But if you believe in ghosts, and there is a ghost, what if you pass straight through it? Because that would be so much worse. However, if you sit there with a loaded gun, you might accidentally murder someone. But then you create your own ghosts.
Would you believe me if I told you that that exact scenario happened down in Hammersmith in London?
Really?
Yeah. We can talk about it in the Blether if you like.
Yes, please. Hammersmith.
We have our Wee Blether series over on Patreon on Mondays where we break down episodes and have random chats. So if you're interested, come join the Patreon because we're going to talk about the Hammersmith ghost.
I put Hammersmith murder. There you go.
Shows our different ways of thinking.
Yep. Because mine definitely happened.
You don't even know the story. Don't at me. You're hearing the story at my leisure, sir.
At my pleasure.
Oh, you don't mean that. You hate it. You don't mean
Paid
it.
to be here. So it's a pretty, there's a lot of activity happening here.
People are very scared. Mm-hmm. John, at one point, apparently read from The Office for the Dead. He was a Catholic, if you remember. Which is a prayer cycle for the souls of the deceased in various haunted spots throughout the house. Although one of the other visitors to the house, who is a barrister called Mr. MacPhail, said, with the frequent occurrence of the words requiem aeternam, it might be as irritating to intelligences which desire to communicate as would be the effect of saying merely, keep still or be quiet, to persons who wish to set forth their wrongs.
Nice.
Because I think requiem aeternam is the peace or eternal rest, I'm assuming. So if you're saying that over and over again and a ghost wants to talk to you, it's like, no, I don't want to rest. I want to speak.
Never thought about that. Like the way this guy thinks. Maybe he should be Mr. Mick Beyond the Veil.
That was a reach.
Did you like it?
Did you pull a muscle?
I think I might have.
Did it hurt?
Yeah, my foot's gone to sleep. If that's
That
the
hurt
same.
more than your run earlier.
Well, MacPhail seems pretty astute. I quite like that. Mm-hmm. This wider picture. I also like the absolute belief. Like, oh, well, if a ghost exists, this might be how they feel. I'm like, oh, you've gone beyond. Are they real or not? I like it.
Yeah, that's not really the debate.
No.
I don't know how often John was there. I don't know if he stayed for the duration, I should say. That wasn't clear because people were coming and going, but I believe Ada was there for the duration.
Yeah. Well, you know, he had a university to rector at.
I forget the dates for what he was doing at that time.
He had
But he had other things going on.
He had a bank he wasn't in charge of.
He was frightfully busy.
He had some poor people to exploit. There was a lot going on.
The vigil ended in May 1897, like I said. Their time renting Ballechin was over, and everybody left. Mm-hmm. So, job done. SPR went, they gathered evidence, saw some ghosts, did what they went there to do, and then went home to organise and sift through everything. And everything's all good and all fine and done.
From what I know. What do you know?
I know some things.
You know, do you want to share?
Do you mean like privately? Or?
No, with the podcast.
Okay, so they carried out their investigation, and like I said, there were a lot of people coming and going to the house.
Yes.
On the 8th of June, the SPR suffered a pretty major blow.
Uh-oh. Was somebody trolling them?
What I'm about to tell you.
Well, I'm trying to guess to push the narrative
Okay,
forward.
so what's your guess then? They've suffered a blow.
I think there was a local lad who just kind of like snuck in all the comings and goings just to like fuck with people. Cut himself in half, lay in a bed, that kind of thing.
It might be even worse than that.
Really?
The Times published a letter to the editor from someone who went by the correspondent.
Ooh.
And this letter was scathing in its criticisms of the investigation.
Oh no.
Scathing.
Ooh.
It might be one of the most scathing things I've ever read on the podcast.
Oh. Do you have it? Can you read it?
I have it for you. I have a lot of source material for the latter half of this episode, and
Excellent.
I think you're going to enjoy it. So I'm going to read most of the letter to you. I've edited some of it just for time, but I have all the sources for everything. So if you want to read it in full, you can.
Yeah.
I'll talk a bit more about where you can in a bit.
Okay.
The correspondent introduces the investigation. He talks about the setup of the thing for people reading to give them some context. And the criticism begins almost straight away.
Okay, hit me.
This lady, he's talking about Ada, well, he doesn't mention her by name, who makes an admirable and charming hostess, kept open house and invited from time to time such persons as she thought likely to give assistance in discovering the origin of the phenomena. In the circumstances, it cannot be thought remarkable that among the persons thus invited there is a predominance of members of or sympathisers with the SPR. As a matter of fact, it was no doubt found difficult to induce others to interest themselves in the business.
Okay.
So claiming that the only people who cared were the SPR.
Yeah, the people who want to find ghosts.
The result was nonetheless unfortunate, since when the present writer paid his visit after investigations had been going on for more than 2 months, no real progress had been made.
Ugh.
Lord Bute's original idea was a good one, but it was never properly carried out. Observing that the SPR had made many investigations in a perfunctory and absurd manner by sending somebody to a haunted house for a couple of nights and then writing an utterly worthless report, he desired in this case a continuous investigation extending over a considerable period.
That's the point I was making,
Right?
Yep.
But fuck, man. He ought, therefore, to have employed a couple of intelligent detectives for the whole term, and thus secured real continuity.
Oh no.
As things are, the only continuity to be found in the presence, itself not entirely continuous, of the lady just mentioned. But simply because she is a lady, and because she had her duties as hostess to attend to, she is unfit to carry out the actual work of investigating the phenomena in question.
Oh well, that's bullshit. So, I was on this guy's side up until that.
So, laying into Ada.
Just for being a woman.
Yeah, and her attention is divided because she's caring for everybody.
Yeah.
So she can't investigate.
Oh.
The writer then, in his letter, identifies Ballechin House. So he says Ballechin House. He lays out exactly where the house is and describes the layout of the whole place.
Mm-hmm.
So he was obviously there. He's not making this up.
Yeah, he's not trolling.
The house has thick walls, both interior and exterior, but their thickness is exaggerated by wood casing, which everywhere gives a hollow sound on percussion. The rafters seem to be as flimsy as the walls are substantial, for the floors vibrate on the smallest provocation, and in any of the bedrooms it's quite easy to hold a conversation with another man in the attics. It follows that the house is one huge sounding board, transmitting and possibly intensifying certain kinds of noise. Rats or even mice would account for many of the sounds complained of.
This guy knows what's up. Well, it's not looking good for John and Ada.
No, especially because the writer explains he slept in what is considered the most haunted bedroom of the house.
Ugh.
And he talks about in his letter how he could hear the servants moving around really clearly in the morning from like other sides of the house.
Uh-huh.
On a windy night, he could hear the pipes that ran to his little wash basin moaning as the wind came up them and out the basin.
Wow. That would be a spooky noise. Kind of easily checked though, eh?
And he was aware of the noise because I think, or a lot of the noises he heard, he was familiar with because he had heard similar things to places he'd stayed in London that were comparable in size.
Yeah.
But he goes on.
Oh, it gets worse? Or does it get better? For me, it gets better. I'm enjoying this.
No haunted house is complete without a legend of a crime or a tragedy or a badly spent life to explain why the ghost walks. In the drawing room after dinner, we listened to our hostess, who is an excellent narrator, expounding the story of the wicked major.
Does he disprove it?
Well, before we even get there, that's not a very unbiased take, and you're giving everyone the story and putting it in their heads.
Well, that's true. That's kind of what I was saying about building up the mania.
It's not very scientific.
No. I also wondered when somebody heard disembodied conversation, when we were saying it might be like a religious ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
I did wonder if it was somebody just talking.
Well, according to this, maybe.
Yeah, or like saying a prayer, like saying your prayers before bed. Maybe they said them out loud for whatever reason, and just somebody else heard them. This is this is the same rage I get in Most Haunted when they split up around the house and then they hear knocks, but they don't entertain that it might be other people in the house walking around.
Mm-hmm. The writer goes on to explain that according to Ada and the stories that he heard when he was there, Major Robert wasn't upset because of the dogs. He was upset because he had been a strict Presbyterian and his nephew who inherited the house was a Roman Catholic. So that was the story that was shared when he was there.
Okay.
Then he says, while we were listening to this impressive recital, someone called attention to noises which I had noticed for 2 or 3 minutes. We were at once informed that there were footsteps in the haunted chambers overhead. There was no servant in the bedrooms. For my own part, I could not have said with the least certainty that the noises were footsteps at all, and they did not seem to me to come from the ceiling, but rather from the side of the room. If there was no one in the rooms overhead at the moment, it became pretty clear that the noises could not mean footsteps in these rooms, since neither abounding wickedness nor overflowing doctrinal zeal can enable a ghost to stamp on the floor like a solid mortal.
This guy knows what's up. This guy knows what's up.
Like, he's not holding back.
Oh, no, he's not. But he's very, very elegant. Eloquent.
Neither abounding wickedness nor overflowing doctrinal zeal can enable a ghost to stamp on the floor like a solid mortal.
Hell yeah.
He even explains that while he was there, he figured out that the butler's wife had a habit of going to bed earlier than everyone else. And to his mind, he's like, well, that's her. She's gone to bed. There is someone who could be walking around. It's probably her because she does this every night. And then he complains because no one checked or even considered that it wasn't paranormal. No one went to check what the noise was. They heard it in the room, said it was footsteps upstairs.
Yep.
And no one.
And they all just agreed.
Yeah.
Oh. It's infuriating.
Other noises were described to me, in particular one which was imitated by throwing a heavy wooden ball on a wooden floor and allowing it to roll until it came in contact with a door. I never heard the noise, but if the imitation was as good as I was led to believe, I have no doubt that the noise was made in the same way and perhaps with the same ball.
Listen to this. I heard this noise. What could it be? That thing you just did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this guy's me if I were to go on like a professional ghost hunt.
This letter is why I did this episode. This is for you. Because this is you in 1897.
I know, this is me. Well, I mean, if I could write as eloquently as that.
He goes on. It's a really long letter. Apologies if this is boring, but
No, well, I'm having the best time.
there was so much I wanted to include because it was just scathing.
Sorry, listeners, this is for all you ham sandwiches who are listening. Or who are listening while your wives listen. I feel that's a lot of my people.
The men.
Yeah.
Ugh, men.
Man.
An intelligent gardener whom I questioned told me that he had kept watch in the house on 2 separate occasions, abstaining from sleep until daylight appeared at 7 o'clock, but without hearing a sound. A caretaker who had spent months at the house and who had to keep a stove alight all night never heard a sound, probably because there was no one to make any.
That would do it.
And then the writer talks about the reputation of the house.
Well, even before we go on, if there's a caretaker who was staying there who had to keep a stove lit all night.
Well, I don't know if they were there while the SPR were there.
Okay.
He was talking to people who were associated with the house.
Got you. Well, because I was just going to say that's quite a noisy thing to do.
I think he talked to people who used to work there.
Got you.
As well as like people who were there currently.
Oh, wow, it's almost like he did his own investigation.
Mm-hmm. So he talks about the reputation of the place.
Yes.
And how it seems that stories of the haunting only started when that family I told you about rented it. Even though they claimed stories of the haunting came from far before.
Yep.
And the children of this family had apparently admitted to pranking each other and making noises because the sound carried so well in the house. And the writer even points out boot marks on some of the haunted bedroom doors where these kids kicked it to scare each other.
Amazing.
Like,
it's such a simple observation.
Mm-hmm. He goes on, the steward or factor on the estate concurs, denying that the house had any reputation for being haunted before the advent of the H family. So I told you about them.
Yep.
They're in part 1 if you want to go back. Yet he is a Highlander, and not without superstition, for he gave it as his opinion that if there was anything in these noises, they must be due to black art. Asked what black art might be, he said he could not tell, but he had often heard about it, and had been told that when once set going, it would go on without the assistance of its authors.
Oh.
He was quite clear, however, that if there is black art, it came in with the H family.
Oh. That sounds like a superstitious Highland man.
So the reports, according to him, didn't start with Robert's nephew. It was after.
Yep. Oh, it's just a rumour mill, isn't it?
The evidence of the lawyer and the factor is discredited on the ground that they are interested in maintaining the reputation of the property, and even the minister of the parish is absurdly supposed to be in awe of the factor. So the SBR heard what these people had to say and didn't count it because they felt that they had a personal stake in the reputation of the building.
Got you.
So it didn't fit with what they were there for, so they didn't record it.
So they literally went, you must be biased. We can't take on your opinion.
Yeah.
Without a hint of irony.
Yeah.
Or self-awareness.
Pardon me.
Ah.
He says, the story of a haunted history of 20 years rests upon nothing but anonymous rumour so vague and intangible that no opportunity of verification can be found.
Damn.
And this is all in public. This is in the Times newspaper. The Society is based in London.
How stoked was the editor when that letter came in?
You don't even know yet. You don't even know.
What was he? Oh my god.
So it's still not done.
Oh.
I'm really sorry if this is boring. I hope it's not, because I don't think it's boring.
I'm loving it, obviously. Because, I'm biased and this is all agreeing with me, so I'm finding the... what's that called again?
Joy.
No, when you just seek out something that agrees with you.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah,
joy.
Yeah, I'm just getting all the joy and confirmation bias from this.
So are you just as bad as the SPR?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? You don't know. My point. What did this guy have to gain? Was he just cracking about?
Well, I don't know if he was one of the investigators.
He
was so unimpressed with what he saw. Because, we talked earlier about the SPR and their approach to research and how there was a lot that you agreed with.
Yes.
If that's how he felt, and then he saw this, maybe that would be enough to make him leave and go, this is terrible.
Yeah.
This isn't how you investigate anything.
Well, because it just sounds like he's passionate, because he's not going to get paid for a letter to the editor, I don't think. I don't think that's how
I don't think so, and it's anonymous, so...
Exactly.
I mean, there's been claims as to who it might be, but the source that I saw a few people who said just a name, but there was no confirmation as to it definitely being them.
Yeah.
I couldn't find that, so I'm not going to say it's one person, because there's no way of... From what I can see, there's no way that they should know that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so he's just super passionate, but he was there and did this, I guess, true investigation in a sense.
Well, he looked into it.
Yep. Good guy.
Do you want to hear some more?
I do want to hear some more.
In connection with John Skinner Stewart's death, I was told an impressive story which illustrates the way of working up a noise into a manifestation.
Oh, nice.
And so this is at the house. People are telling him these stories. So again, it's contaminating people.
Yeah.
On a day when he was to leave home for London, the proprietor was talking to the aforementioned factor in the library. So the correspondent spoke with this factor.
Yep.
And the proprietor is John Skinner Stewart. Was talking to the aforementioned factor in the library when a tremendous crash was heard on the table between them. For God's sake, cried the husband, don't mention this to my wife. He went to London and next day was killed by a cab accident.
Oh.
Before the news reached his family, an appalling noise was heard in the room he usually occupied. But, as the reader will expect to hear, everything was found undisturbed. The circumstantial story is false in every detail. There was no table, there was a bureau. There was no crash, but the lid of the bureau, having been imperfectly closed, slipped into its place. The husband did not mention either his maker or his wife or the trivial noise. He was not killed the next day, but more than 3 weeks afterwards, and no mysterious sound in his room heralded the news.
Oh,
And he knows because he asked.
I'm bubbling with rage over here. If you've gone to investigate for 3 months, why wouldn't you ask stuff like that?
And if you weren't doing this, what were you doing?
Yeah.
I'll go on. Not even the solemn blessing of the Roman Catholic Archbishop, who was invited to the house for the purpose of bestowing it, can rid a dwelling of noises partly incident to domestic operations, and partly due to the physiological peculiarities of the inmates. Lord Bute's confidence has been grossly abused by someone, and what he will probably regret even more, he has been unwittingly led to do an appreciable injury to the owners of Ballechin. It was represented to him by someone that he was taking the most haunted house in Scotland, a house with an old and established reputation for mysterious, if not supernatural, disturbances. What he has got is a house with no reputation whatever of that kind, with no history, with nothing germane to his purpose beyond a cloud of baseless rumours produced during the last 12 months. Who is responsible for this imposture is not my business to know or to inquire, but that it is an imposture of the most shallow and impudent kind there can be no manner of doubt. It has no local reputation of the kind, even now, beyond the parish it stands in. The whole thing has been fudged up in London, upon the basis of some distorted account of the practical jokes of the H's. Without attempting to judge individuals, it must be said that an experience like the present intensifies the suspicion and disgust which close contact with the SPR always tends to excite. Men do not sufficiently consider the responsibility which they incur, financially or morally, when they lend the sanction of their names to proceedings which they do not control and perhaps never inquire into. Seen all close, the methods of the Society for Psychical Research are extremely repulsive. What it calls evidence is unsifted gossip, always reckless and often malignant. What it calls investigation would provoke contempt in Bedlam itself. And what it calls discrimination is too often the selection from gossip, all worthless of those portions which fit best into the theory it happens to be advocating. As for its treatment of the degraded beings whom it calls sensitives and mediums, the epileptics, the neurotics, the cretins, and the tricksters.
Cretins.
What I think it means cretins is in like someone who doesn't have the intelligence, like a high IQ to fully understand what they're doing.
Yep.
And tricksters from whom it pretends to draw spiritual insight. That is a system of moral vivisection, incomparably more cruel and degrading than the worst practices ever laid at the door of physiologists.
Whoa. He has gone for the jugular. Not just that they botched up this investigation, but the whole basis of their existence is nonsense.
Mm-hmm. He called them extremely repulsive.
That's savage. But I completely agree. Because like you mentioned that they took in unbiased people who didn't know why they were there to like get their opinions and stuff. But they went into a house full of Ouija boards and crystals and all the other things you mentioned.
And we're told outright who was haunting the house.
Well, yeah. So that's not even almost unbiased.
What I thought was mental was because I heard the reputation of Ballechin.
Uh-huh.
And like the haunting and the story of the Major. And then it was after that I came across his letter. And it was him laying out that, yeah, there was no reputation. There were no stories. No one thought this place was haunted. It has no kind of history that lends itself to that. It seems like this is entirely fabricated.
Just hype. Mm-hmm. It's like a lot of the witch hunts.
Well, it's why I thought it was interesting last episode when you brought up Mania. Mm-hmm. Before we even got here.
I just saw it coming.
Mm-hmm. So that was on June 8th. So that's a week or so after the investigation ended.
Yeah.
On June 9th, Ada responded with a letter of her own,
Oh, man.
writing under her pseudonym X.
Yep.
I think this is the entire letter that I have here.
Okay.
As the hostess referred to, I may perhaps be allowed space to express the unbounded astonishment with which I read this detailed account of the house and of some of the persons most closely associated with it. Such an account could only have been furnished by one of our own guests, every one of whom came on the distinct understanding that we were bound in honour and courtesy to the owners of the house not to reveal its identity. And that's all she says.
Oh, that's clutching at straws, isn't it?
So she doesn't really address anything.
No.
The only thing that she says is that the correspondent referred to Ballechin by name, described where it was, and everyone who was at the investigation was apparently told not to release the name because it might upset the people who own it.
Yep, he's going to get kicked out of the magic circle.
He outed the trick. But then, after her letter, the correspondent came out and said there was no agreement for secrecy. That was never the deal, and no one was told that while we were there.
It was implied.
So he replied again. He said, "No, that's bollocks."
Wow. That's crazy.
So after that, Frederick Myers, the guy I told you about earlier, one of the kind of founders of the SBR,
Yep.
he wrote into the Times.
Oh, he's dipping his oar.
On the 10th. This is them
Yeah.
writing in immediately, and it was published on the 10th.
Wow.
On the 10th, he basically denounced the entire investigation.
Cut off the hand to save the body.
Yeah, another major blow. But he had visited Ballechin House himself. He was there. He was part of it.
Oh, sleazy bastard.
And he still wrote in, and this is who she supposedly has her affair with.
Oh.
But he wrote into the Times and said, "I visited Ballechin representing that society and decided that there was no such evidence as could justify us in giving the results of the inquiry a place in our proceedings."
Oh, aye.
Well, the proceedings was like the society's journal or like a newsletter.
Yeah.
They would share their findings and their reports there. So they refused to publish what John and Ada and the others had found and put together.
Oh, no. 3 months of work. Because you did it wrong. Oh.
So he's come out and said, "No, there was nothing. We've looked at it. I was there was nothing."
So what they did is they just ran a ghost camp.
Yeah, kind of.
They didn't do an investigation.
Summer camp.
Yeah. They ran a summer camp for ghosts. They're ghost hunting.
Yeah, no ghosts.
No ghosts.
Apparently.
A ghostless ghost hunting camp. I mean, that's what all ghost hunting camps would be, but...
This isn't even the end. On the 12th, a different guest of the investigation wrote into the Times.
Oh, yeah.
Confirming that there was no agreement for secrecy and that Ada had fabricated that in her letter.
Why?
They went on to say, "I went to Ballechin as an investigator on the distinct understanding that I was to assume a critical and sceptical attitude and was to have an absolutely free hand. There was, however, no call for either scepticism or criticism, as my experiences during the 2 nights I spent there in one of the haunted chambers were of the most commonplace description. I heard no sound of the supernatural and saw no glimmer of a ghost. What struck me as the most extraordinary at Ballechin was that a so-called experiment had been carried on there for nearly 3 months at the time of my visit by the SBR,
Wow.
without any attempt at either experimentation or research. Unscreened evidence of improbable phenomena had been collected in heaps, but the simplest and most obvious tests had not been applied. The residents and visitors, it seemed to me, had been sitting there all the time, agape for wonders, straining on the limits of audition, and fermenting one another's superstitions without taking any precautions to prevent deception or employing agents to clear up turbid observations."
And it would be so simple. I suppose it's just... Or... I was going to say, I suppose it's just what happens when you surround yourself with yes men, so they're all just agreeing with each other about how good it's going. But it sounds like that wasn't necessarily the case. It's just that whenever anyone said no, they ignored them.
Well, this is a different person to the first correspondent.
Yeah.
Who was there and basically said they didn't do anything.
No.
They sat and listened to strange noises and said it was ghosts.
Yeah. Should we check? No, there's no point checking. What would that do? That's obviously a ghost. Wait, are they talking about Ballechin House or Most Haunted? I'm not sure which.
They do have a lot in common, don't they? What I thought was interesting was this writer, the guy on the 12th, he seems to know a bit about the local area. He talks about how there might be strange noises at Ballechin, but it's 20 miles from a village called Comrie, which is a village, it's really close to the Highland boundary fault. So this is an area that gets earth tremors.
Oh.
And still gets earth tremors. They're usually pretty minor. There was one, that was known as the Great Earthquake, either just before or just after this. That was quite a strong one. But because it's on the fault, you do get earth tremors from time to time.
That's
so he's suggesting this house is really close to this village where they have this all the time. There's a chance it could be this.
That's something you could find out.
It's something you could measure over 3 months, potentially.
Yep.
And he also accuses Ada of not making the time to carry out the suggestions she was given for scientific experimentation. He claims that people went to her with ideas for things they could measure and experiments they could run, and she said, oh no, we don't have time for this, we have to do this, or this is happening.
Yeah.
And they just never got round to them.
Well, that kind of plays into the first one, where he said that she was too busy being a host to do the investigation.
Which reeked of sexism.
Yeah, I think it was a very sexist statement. But there's maybe a grain of truth there, where if she was trying to organise this many people and make sure they had a nice time...
Well, chances are she was busy.
Yeah, that would take up a lot of your time. But it's almost like they lost sight of why they were there. They were just having a good time.
Or just got completely wrapped up in the fact that they were ghosts.
Yeah.
So they weren't running the experiments because it was so obvious the place was haunted.
Well,
so they're just recording what they hear.
I mean, you're getting all this evidence and that's amazing. And this is going to be groundbreaking. You're going to release all this amazing evidence you have.
Well, I mean, it's almost the entire basis for 99% of the ghost shows you see on TV.
Well, exactly.
That's what it is.
Yeah. You assume there's a ghost there, and then anything that happens, you just blame the ghost for.
Will you make it fit?
Yep.
On the 14th of June, the drama escalated even further.
Are the police getting involved? Like, what's going on here?
The owner of Ballechin House, John Skinner Stewart's son, wrote into the Times.
Oh, no.
As owner of Ballechin, I desire to state that I had no idea I was letting Ballechin to Lord Bute and the Psychical Society, and would never have done so had I known.
Oh, that's a shame.
I let Ballechin for 3 months to a Colonel Taylor with fishing, etc., and it was only at the end of his tenancy I discovered for what purposes. Lord Bute unsuccessfully tried to get my father's permission for 1 or 2 members of the SBR to reside in Ballechin House. As to the stories contained in the article, they are without foundation.
I assumed he was in on it, at least.
No.
How annoyed.
I looked into it a little bit. And there was a Colonel Taylor who was there for a lot of the investigation. He seems to have been a member of the SPR. And they rented it under his name.
Yep.
Because it seems like Bute, John, had gone to John Skinner Stewart asking for permission to investigate, and he had said no.
Yes.
On at least 2 occasions. He had told him no. But we'll get to it in a bit, but the counterclaim from Ada and John, or Ada in the book, is that John would fund projects like this quite a lot. And he had fingers in lots of different pies, so sometimes he was funding to have books published that weren't associated with the SPR, just generally. So her argument is, well, he funded this book to be published, but it's not published under his name because, like, it's not him leading it. So her argument was the same here, that, oh, well, he shouldn't have to rent it out under his name. He's funding it. that's completely normal, that he didn't use his name, that someone else's name is attached and he's just putting the money forward. I don't know if I've explained that very well.
That argument is thinner than the sheet over the man in the cupboard.
But that's really bad.
That's really duplicitous.
Especially because the name is out there.
Yep.
They've talked about Ballechin in the paper.
Mm-hmm. And if that was Ada's instruction, was to, like, we shouldn't really be here, tell people not to mention it by name. Just say a house in Scotland or something. She should have been on that. It should have been the first thing that everybody got told who arrived. And it sounds like there's quite a lot of people passing through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I had a look. I think it's later in my notes, but for some investigations, it was standard practice of the SBR to keep names anonymous for the benefit of the people living there. So if they felt that releasing the names would cause upset or damage to reputation, they would keep it under wraps.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But in some cases, they didn't do this.
Yeah.
In some, they did.
Imagine they did it when asked and not otherwise.
Yeah, or just when they thought it was the best thing to do.
Yes.
On the same day that John Skinner Stewart's son's letter was published, another letter was published from a member of the H family.
Oh, shit.
The previous tenants of Ballechin.
Oh my god, what do they have to say?
Claiming they had nothing to do with starting any rumours that the house was haunted.
Oh.
The writer claims that they were told by others in the area that the house was haunted. And they say that the boot marks weren't there when they left. And the writer themselves doesn't believe in ghosts and had actually tried to squash the rumours while they were living there, but other people were telling them about the ghosts.
Wow. Do they say why they left then?
I think it was just like a normal end of tenancy. I don't think anything... Oh, no.
Well, because they rented for the year and left early.
I don't think it does say why they left. Pardon me, I'm getting people mixed up. I apologise. No, I didn't see any reason laid out for why they left early.
Huh, so maybe just something came up.
I could be wrong on that one.
Maybe.
If anyone knows anything, you can let me know. The final letter of that same day, so we're still on the 14th of June, is someone laying into the SBR as a whole, basically saying that they're stupid for hiding the identities of places and people they investigate. They're saying that it doesn't have any value. They should always be publishing the names, otherwise the stories and the evidence has no meaning.
Well, I mean, I kind of get what they're saying, but sometimes privacy is important.
Well, yeah, their claim was that they had spoken to a person in the SBR and were told about this woman, we'll call her Miss Jones, who lives at 10 Cotting Road, we'll just say that, and she had a ghost. They're like, well, that means nothing to me.
Yeah, because you can't verify it or even begin to try and verify it.
Yeah, that was their argument.
Which is a good one, but yeah, I err on the side of caution with privacy.
I think it makes sense, especially like in today's climate. You can understand it.
Well, yeah, even more so now.
But after this letter, the owner of Clarendon House, who I told you about earlier, Ada had investigated Clarendon House.
Yes.
And John had funded it. She wrote in because she was so angry that the name of Clarendon House had been shared when Ada had published her findings with no consideration for them.
Oh.
So in the past, she had shared the name and it hadn't been an issue. Or to her, she had seen no problem with it. But it had had ramifications on trying to let the property.
Yes.
Because people knew that this investigation had happened. They knew where it was.
No. See, that's why I respect privacy.
So this is blowing up completely. It's getting way out of hand.
Yeah. This is the 1900s equivalent of blowing up on Twitter.
Yeah. And the SBR started getting some serious heat.
Evidently.
On the 15th of June, Myers wrote another letter to the Times. Major damage control at this point because it's just completely exploded.
Yeah.
He defends the practices of the SBR in this letter, saying that they're scientific and thorough to the last.
We do science, you guys.
Yeah. He says, We exist in order to carry, if we can, the methods of recognised science into a region where no recognised science has as yet forced its way. So I think I mentioned that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
To those who deem us credulous, we say, criticise our methods and we will do our best to improve them. Attack our evidence and we will strengthen or abandon it. And to those who think us over-sceptical, we say similarly, offer us more and better evidence, and you will find that there is no case which we will not set forth with candour and criticise with care.
I like that.
So he's trying.
He's done a pretty good job, again, as values to hold for what they do.
Yeah, but he was at the house.
Yeah.
And he didn't do anything about the methods and things then. And then came out after the fact saying, we don't want anything to do with this.
It's not really good enough, is it?
No.
Fanciful words, but hollow intentions.
Yeah. So what are you feeling about Ballechin now?
Well, I was up there at a 10 on the spookometer, but 0 on the compellometer. now it's a 0 on both.
Yeah.
It's just a house.
I may have something that will change your mind. On June 21st, the butler, Harold Saunders, who had worked at Ballechin House during the previous autumn before the investigation, wrote into the Times, defending the claims of supernatural activity.
Okay.
He initially didn't believe what other people were telling him was happening in the house. Lots of people were telling him there were strange noises and they were being woken up at night, and he hadn't heard anything, so he thought it was nonsense. But after a few days of working there for the stay, he started hearing really weird things.
Ooh.
He started waking up suddenly in the middle of the night, every night, as if someone had touched him and woken him up. He started hearing thumping. One of the guests felt as if someone was pulling the duvet off him while he slept.
Oh, that would be horrible.
Phantom footsteps, dresses rustling where no one was standing. Harold stayed up through the night 12 times during his stay at Ballechin House.
Wow.
Trying to find the source of the noises because they were that loud and that frequent. And he never found anything. Although he talks in the letter about getting this really strange feeling in the minutes before a noise would happen.
That's unusual.
Like he could feel it coming. His worst night was on one of these vigils where he stayed up all night, and he heard loud footsteps approaching him, 2 distinct groans were the words that he used. And he described these as sounding like someone being stabbed and then falling to the floor.
Oh.
And that's a direct quote from him.
Yep. Gross.
So he goes to bed at this point. He's had enough. He doesn't like it. Doesn't want any part of noises like that sound like someone's being hurt, so he leaves. And then this is what he says happened. I had not been in bed 3 minutes before I experienced the sensation as before. So the feeling that something was going to happen. But instead of being followed by knocking, my bedclothes were lifted up and let fall again. First at the foot of my bed, but gradually coming towards my head. I held the clothes around my neck with my hands, but they were gently lifted in spite of my efforts to hold them. I then reached around me with my hand, but could find nothing. This was immediately followed by my being fanned as though some bird were flying around my head, and I could distinctly hear and feel something breathing on me.
Ugh.
I then tried to reach some matches that were on a chair by my bedside, but my hand was held back as if by some invisible power. Then the thing seemed to retire to the foot of my bed. Then I suddenly found the foot of my bed lifted up and carried around towards the window for about 3 or 4 feet, then replaced to its former position. All this did not take, I should think, more than 2 or 3 minutes, although at the time it seemed hours to me.
Well, that's horrifying.
He goes on in his letter to dispute the statements made by the gardener and the caretaker. And he makes claims that they had witnessed the ghostly goings-on together. So he and them had been in the same places at the same time and seen and heard the same things, but then they claimed they heard nothing.
Yeah.
And he says the caretaker was deaf and she always slept on the ground floor when everything was happening on the floor above.
Well, I mean, that's fairly compelling. Can you imagine if that happened to you?
I honestly can't. When he talked about not being able to lift his hands and things, there was a bell that went off my head, like sleep paralysis.
Yeah, that did in my head too.
But the bed wouldn't move.
No, the bedclothes. I assume that's like the duvet and stuff.
Yeah, I think he's talking about the duvet because he's trying to hold it down.
Yeah, getting lifted up. Like, that's wild. And the whole bed being pulled along.
Yeah. By 3 or 4 feet. Like, you would notice that. That's not just moving around in bed.
That would change you as a person if that happened to you.
And he felt strongly enough about it. Like, he wasn't working there anymore. He had nothing to prove. But he wrote into the Times, having seen the nonsense that had been happening over the days prior, and wrote in to defend what they were doing by saying, no, I was there and this happened to me. And they're wrong because they saw these things with me and I was there with them.
Yeah. I suppose the being together, though, me and you were together in Greyfriars.
Very true.
And someone asked me if Greyfriars was haunted and I would say no.
Very true, because you're a madman. So, what are you thinking at the moment? There's been a lot of debate, a lot of anger.
Yeah. We're really back and forthing and things. Well, no one's going to be surprised. I don't think it's haunted.
No, not convinced.
Not convinced at all. I mean, it sounds like a kind of spooky place to be in, just in itself, if it's really rattly and old and there's lots of weird noises.
It would be it's always disconcerting to be in a new place that has noises that you don't get in your house.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying they're like spooky noises, but if there's clicks and bangs and things you're not used to, it can be quite unsettling.
We woke up again the other night from a door noise.
Yeah.
One of our doors blew open and it made a really horrible, like, ping sound.
Gonna have to start chronicling this, I think.
Yeah. But it would be happening through the daytime.
I think we talked more about the noise on Patreon if you're interested.
Yeah, we had a different noise, which remains unexplained.
It's the first time Kieran's jumped out of bed thinking someone's in the house, and then there's no one there.
Yeah. This time I didn't jump out of bed.
No, there was just a horrible ping.
And then I lay there for a minute, figured out what it was, and then just went and closed the door so it didn't happen again.
I'm glad that you picked up on the back and forth, because I really wanted to convey to you just the shift in opinion.
I know.
And the differences in how people approach the same thing.
Crazy. Well, even my thoughts between this part and part one, wild.
I did set that up on purpose.
You did?
I did.
I was very lucky if you didn't.
Unfortunately, things didn't go particularly well for John and Ada following this point. Ada more so than John, which again seems unfair.
It does, but I suppose if she's part of the SBR and he is more just an interested benefactor, I think, or was he also...
I think he was a member. He certainly worked with them a lot and he financed a lot.
Yeah.
Whether he directly investigated, I don't know, but he was on site. So he's not any better than anyone else who was there.
No, but I can see she would have more to lose as an investigator and medium than he would as a financier.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. But I do also think that she's an easier punching bag.
Yes.
Because she's a woman and she's not a marquess.
Yes.
In the July 1897 edition of the Journal of the Society for Psychical Research. So remember I said they released papers?
Yes.
This is their scientific journal, the July edition. So this is 6 weeks or so after the investigation was done.
Yep, they've released a fresh toilet paper.
This is what was written in it. It's been brought to the notice of the council that, in spite of a disclaimer by the honorary secretary, who was Myers at the time, in the Times, there is still an impression in certain quarters that the Society is responsible for the hiring of Ballechin House, with a view to the investigation of phenomena alleged to occur there. The council therefore desire to make it known to all readers of the journal that this impression is altogether erroneous. The question of hiring Ballechin House was never brought before the council in any form whatsoever, and they are entirely without responsibility with regard to it. They desire also to impress upon their members the importance investigations of the kind in question of taking all possible care to prevent the publication of names, where there is any reason to suppose that this would cause annoyance. This rule has been strictly observed in all cases in which reports of experiences of this class have been published in the proceedings.
Well, it's very well put, and there's enough there for it to be believable, but so slopey shoulders.
They're just washing their hands of the whole mess.
Yeah, they've taken Ada and John as the scapegoats. Mm-hmm. Because if your man in charge was there, he knew it was ongoing.
Yep, and he knew the methods they were using. He would have observed what they had done
Exactly.
up until that point. But they're saying, well, we never knew about it. It was never brought to us. They've done this independently of us. We never agreed it, never okayed it, nothing. And we remind everyone that you should be anonymous.
Yeah.
Because they weren't.
Oh.
Which may be true, because it does seem like Ada didn't insist upon it.
No, that last part's fair enough as just a general reminder, being like, what are you doing? Stop sharing names.
Yeah, they don't want anything to do with it.
Well, I can see why. Because if you could wash your hands of it, you would.
Oh, absolute shit show.
Yeah. Just nonsense up, down, north, west and south.
Following this, Ada was kicked out of the SPR.
I thought you were going to say killed.
Killed? She's not killed.
That seems extreme.
No, she was kicked out.
Damn.
They expelled her from the society. She was no longer welcome.
Like Expelliarmus. And she flew out the door.
But one of the reasons I think might be responsible for Ada getting more heat than John was because she had already been hounded with accusations of falsifying evidence.
Oh no.
And taking other people's accounts of paranormal activity and saying she had seen them herself.
Oh no.
Like in her account at Clarendon House. She was accused of faking everything there.
Oh.
And then giving the name of the place. So she was already dealing with all of that.
Yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable at all that she got kicked out, really.
No, it's just the equality of the thing.
Yeah, it's not fair on her generally, but I feel if she had a penis and had done all those things, that would still be grounds to kick her out.
Yes, it would, but just it was only her.
Yeah.
Where I'm always a bit sceptical, being like, is this fair? But she was accused of faking her mediumship and all of that business. And she was expelled from the society because of this.
No. I'll just have to go back to being a regular run-of-the-mill fake medium.
But 2 years after this, after the investigation, John and Ada released their book.
I thought you mentioned a book.
I did. They released it anyway in like 1899, 1900.
Yep.
They called it The Alleged Haunting of Ballechin House, but they blanked out Ballechin. Which was quite common at the time in Victorian times. If you're reading books and they don't want names, it's the first letter and then a line. You might have seen that before.
I have, yeah.
So they do that. I've read an electronic copy of this book, and the title has it blanked out. It's blanked out all the way through. The names of everyone associated with the house has the first letter and then a line. But they still released it.
It doesn't seem enough to just have like, B house. Like, well, that's Ballechin.
And really stupid things. They say that how it's this house in the middle of P Shire, Scotland. I said, well,
It's not the most cryptic thing you've ever heard, is it?
it could only be Perthshire.
Well, yeah.
Oh, I read a good chunk of the book, as much as I was able. And a lot of the book, it's less about the haunting and more about a rebuttal to those Times articles or letters.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And in the book, they include the letters in full. And that's where I read them. There was another good website, which I'll leave a link to, that has the articles as they were written. They included every article and they refute each one. So it's less about the haunting and it's more about showing the facts of what they were doing in response to these these letters that were published after the investigation.
Yeah, it's more reputation management. Even after the fact, it's still not about getting the evidence.
But obviously it's not just that, because part of the book is Ada's journal.
Yeah.
Documenting everything that was happening and what she experienced. So there is that in there too. She kept a journal for the 3 months.
Yep.
So I'm not saying it's only rebuttal and, ego management. But it was a good chunk of what I read.
Crazy.
It's addressing the claims in the letters.
And that's a lot easier to do when you have 2 years to think about it, you know?
And a lot of the rebuttal or the evidence they provide is, oh, well, I spoke to this person and this is what they said.
Yeah.
And I spoke to this person and this is actually what they said.
Actually, I heard something different. So, get the fuck out of here.
It's a really bizarre read. I feel like, even though it has all this controversy, I feel like it has a special place to me because it's just this perfect relic of its time.
It sounds wild.
It's such an interesting snapshot into how they were living. Well worth a read.
Wild.
Because it's just bananas.
Do you know what's a weird thought? If it was published around 1900, the copyright would have ran out and we could publish an edition of it.
Get rich quick scheme, called it. No one else allowed to do it now.
Generally Spooky presents The Haunting of Ballechin House.
The alleged haunting of Ballechin House. Even then they were careful.
Wild. So, I'm curious, does the house still have a haunted reputation? Is it still there?
Well, we're going to talk about it, Kieran, don't you worry.
I'm glad.
John died in 1900.
Oh, wow.
Either before or immediately as the book was released.
Oh, man.
He died. So, I didn't want to sort of spoil it too soon, but that may be another reason why he didn't get as much heat, because he died.
It's a good reason.
Very soon after. So he didn't really have to deal with it.
It's harder to blame a ghost. That's the takeaway.
Yeah. Over the course of its lifetime, the SPR would continue to be dogged with claims of being drawn in by fakes and scoundrels, but they continued to do their work finding the truth of paranormal occurrences. I read a really interesting book called The Haunting of Alma Fielding, which I think I've talked about before.
Yep.
If you're interested in this, that's all about one of the investigations the
Oh, is
SPR
it?
did. The Society is still going today. You can still join.
Should we join?
I don't think they want us, Kieran.
For shits and gigs.
I don't think they want us. For exactly that reason. Because you just said that.
Well, I was thinking about how it's a good thing that Ada will still be able to talk to John. So if he died before the book finished, they could still get it finished together. You know?
You're so snarky. Today, the Society is run by a president, like it was then, and about 20 or so members who are like the higher-ups. So you can join underneath that, but there are 20... I'm assuming they're kind of like full-time members.
Yes, the kind of... maybe even employees.
The main core of the Society. They're based down in London, and they still release the Journal of the Society for Psychical Research.
Wow.
And this journal is peer-reviewed.
Oh, I would love to read that.
So you can.
I might.
In the late 70s, the SPR investigated the now infamous Enfield poltergeist, which, if you're interested in the paranormal, you may have heard of. It's a very famous maybe I, maybe no haunting, which we can talk about in the blether if you like. Today, on the SPR's website, they say, the Society's work has inevitably brought it into conflict with skeptics, who believe that purely naturalistic explanations of psi phenomena can and must be found, and who strive to reinterpret researchers' findings in terms of fraud and misperception. In recent years, the field has faced a growing campaign by ideologically motivated activists determined to discourage interest in these matters in order to support scientific naturalism against a perceived threat of superstition.
And what was that from?
That's the Society themselves. That's from their website.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Talking about their mission and their experience.
Oh, that's interesting. So now they are just leaning fully into finding frauds.
No, they're saying that the Society is in conflict with skeptics
Oh.
who say a purely naturalistic explanation must be found
Ah, I see.
to support scientific naturalism against a perceived threat of superstition, which they're
Yes.
saying the Society is bringing.
Uh-huh. So they're just fighting to be relevant, really.
Kinda. There's a Scottish Society for Psychical Research, which was founded in 1987.
Wow.
So much more recently, by Archie Roy, who was an emeritus professor of astronomy at Glasgow University.
Wow.
and had been a president of the SBR, I believe.
Uh-huh.
So then he founded the Scottish chapter. And he started the Scottish chapter to provide students of his night class an introduction to psychical research with further opportunities to learn about the paranormal, and to provide a paranormal fire brigade for members of the public distressed by their paranormal experiences.
It's quite nice, really.
That was his reasoning.
I'm not against that. Random.
Yeah, but looking at it, membership has dropped significantly over recent years. And their website blames Most Haunted and the like, and the dastardly internet.
The dastardly internet.
They don't say dastardly, but it's the internet in italics for the drop in their membership. That damned internet.
That damned internet. Really interest in the SSPR.
Yeah, but they still have about 50 members, and they hold like meetings and lectures and things.
Do you think it's actually just an MLM? So the members, or a pyramid scheme even, so the members get reimbursed if they can find more members?
I don't know. Certainly with the Scottish chapter, I feel it might just be good fun, because I've highlighted a quote from their website where they say, "We value common sense and a sense of humour in equal measure."
That sounds right.
And I think that is the most Scottish approach to ghost hunting I've ever heard.
Yeah. Just about, thought that was a ghost.
You know,
What a knobhead.
it really appealed to me.
Yeah, I like that.
The sort of landmark publications of the SPR, if you're interested, remain Phantasms of the Living, which was published in 1886. It's almost like an encyclopedia of paranormal.
Uh-huh.
Very interesting. And the Census of Hallucinations, which was put together between 1882 and 1895. And they surveyed 17,000 people.
Wow.
On their experiences with the paranormal for this census.
That's pretty cool. I just like the word phantasms.
Yeah. So even today, those are their most well-known works.
Yep.
If you want to look into them more. As for Ballechin House, it was completely uninhabited by 1932.
Oh, wow.
And in 1963, most of the building burned down. There was a really bad fire.
Oh, no.
So today, only a couple of the smaller buildings exist, like the old servants' quarters and I think a stable. That's all that's left.
Wow.
So after all of that, it's like nothing was ever there. And nothing ever happened.
Wait. Does just a ghost of the house remain?
I mean, it'd be very cool.
Ghost house. Well, there you go.
But that's the story of Ballechin House.
I guess there's not much market for month-long rentals of mansions anymore, is there? And by anymore, I mean for the last 90 years.
I mean, maybe now with Airbnb, maybe it's
come,
picked up again.
Might have come back around, that's true.
I found it quite poetic that there was this huge controversy over, is it not haunted? Is there something there? Is it quiet? And now there's nothing.
Yeah.
Now it's like, you could debate whether the house was even there.
Yeah. Now it'd be a more interesting debate of, was there a fire or was it burned down for insurance?
And now it's just like this kind of fever dream.
Yeah.
And it's like it never existed.
That's crazy. I was thinking I hadn't heard of it, even though we've like stayed down that way quite a lot.
It's because it's not there anymore.
There's not much to see. Big question. Would you go there at night?
Oh, no, I don't go out at night.
Well, that's true.
I don't go out at all.
Okay, would you go there generally, or would it be too spooky?
I would be so interested to see the site. Mm-hmm. Just because there's so many questions and so many weird contradictions. It would be interesting to see the physical place.
I'd be curious to go there yourself.
Since that's the only thing that you could count on, is standing on the place where it used to be and saying, I was there.
Yeah, and just kind of seeing how you felt, I guess, eh?
Because there's nothing else you can count on.
No.
Like, there's a good chance that none of it is real.
I wonder who owns it, since it's been abandoned for 90 years.
I don't know. I don't know if the land was maybe like brought into a different estate.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's just a piece of land as part of somebody else's land.
Because you're between Pitlochry and Dunkeld. Like I said,
Yep.
you're fairly near Blair Athol, I think, and that's a big estate, if I remember rightly.
I think there's quite a lot of really big estates privately owned in Perthshire.
So maybe someone's built something else.
Maybe. Well, I think my final thoughts are just that I had such high hopes for the SPR from what their mission statement was, and they've been dashed. It could have been so good. Could have been great.
Well, we could talk about it again or somewhere else, because they did expose a lot of fraud.
Yeah.
Which is what you were hoping for. They did do that.
That's true.
There was the case of, was it Katie King? There was a woman that they investigated who claimed to be able to call upon the spirit of Katie King. And they basically exposed that she couldn't. But it's all sort of equal measure, because there's lots of instances where they were completely taken in by a fraud.
Yep. But then they were willing to say we were wrong, which is what you want, especially in science.
Well, just even, what am I trying to say? Even though they were wrong as often as they were right in being able to point out someone as a fraud, that in itself, to me, is fascinating.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing. And that's what they were committed to doing. That's what they spent their time doing. That's insane.
That is insane.
And so interesting.
Especially when you consider the time and the just general mania around the supernatural in the Victorian era, where there were frauds abundant. It sounds like every third door could tell your fortune if you were walking through London in the 1880s.
Yeah, kinda. It was everywhere.
Yeah, they were doing good work.
I hope you enjoyed these episodes. Something a bit different for us, I think.
I think so.
That's why I was looking forward to doing this.
Yeah, back into the... We had some deep history the past few episodes with the Campbells, so we're bringing it round to the spooky again. And end of the season. Next episode.
I know. I don't know if you guys know, but the end of the season, episode 10, will mark our official 50th episode.
Yes.
If you don't count the mini-series. Our 50th main episode. Which is wild.
That is wild. 50 main episodes. That's a lot.
And not counting the multiple parts.
No.
Counting each of them as one episode.
Wild. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what we're going to talk about.
It's going to be a good one.
Ooh.
I have so much work to do. But it's going to be good.
It's going to be great. Please consider leaving us a review if you have enjoyed this on whatever podcast player you listen on. You can rate one on Apple Podcasts, or you can give us a star rating elsewhere.
You can follow us on Instagram and see lots of pictures of Odin, because that's really all I post over there.
That's the good stuff.
Or if we go on field trips, you can see some lovely pictures of Scotland if you're so inclined.
Yes, you can.
The best way to support us is over on Patreon.
Yep.
Where you get lots of extra goodies and extra content that's Patreon exclusive.
You can't get enough of the Generally Spooky podcast. That's the place to be.
Yep. We're posting there 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, we are.
So lots of goodies.
So come hang out.
We're heading over there right now to record a blether and chat about this episode behind its back. So come join us. It's going to be great.
Come get into the tea, you guys. Bye.
Bye.